Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking. And most and foremost, huge thank you to the sponsors. Because it is for you that I make these videos, and without you there is no point in making them. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate your generosity. For no particularly good reason, today we have decided to do another video on navigational instruments. And, well, first and foremost, because I love navigational instruments. I love the traditional methods of navigation. I'm probably the only one who does not like GPS. But don't let me start on this particular hair, for we will be here for the next 2 or 3 days. We have already done a video on the octant from the Brigantine Ernestina from Camden, Maine, and it is an instrument that I value highly, and especially in generous way in which it was given to me. And I think that this is where the origin of today's video comes from, because a couple of days ago I was teaching about navigation at the university, and I was showing that instrument to the students. And the director, producer, and formidable force behind the editor behind these videos suggested that I should do one on the other major instrument that followed the octant. And that, of course, is the sextant. I actually have 2 sextants. This is the second one that I have obtained recently. A friend, a very dear and valued, respected friend, gave me this one as a gift. I don't think that this one has any particularly interesting story behind it. But I have another one also, which is in the office, otherwise I would have shown it also. Japanese 1970s. This one is manufactured by Stanley in London. I'm not sure what vintage it is. It's probably modern, or at least fairly modern. Anyway. Right. When we were talking about the octant, I pointed out that the first version of the octant was suggested as early as the tail end of the 17th century, and it was proposed by Sir Isaac Newton himself. However, there the instrument did not held like this. It was actually like this, horizontally, and never got any track until Halley, in the philosophical papers of the Royal Society, in an issue from 1737, published an article on his version of the octant, the double refractory instrument. The sextant works on exactly the same principle as the octant. There is theoretically no difference between the two, except that the sextant has almost double the range of measurements that it can take. As you can see, the arc down at the bottom is at 120 degrees. And, well, obviously it can measure a larger range of angles. It has the vernier scale, and this particular one is with rotational vernier at the bottom. Eventually it superseded all other optical instruments, but it must be said that many of these continue to coexist. We have numerous references in logbooks, even from the 19th century, when sextants were already in use, let alone octants, in which skippers were still using the quadrant, an instrument that emerged in the 16th century. It was cheap, it was easy to make, you could make it at home, really, while these require obviously somewhat more precise machining. The sextant can be built, as is this one, of brass, and the majority of them, most of the ones that are surviving, especially the a little bit later ones, are all cut from brass. The earlier versions could be made also of hardwood, or at least the frame, the basic frame, can be out of hardwood. The alidade, the arm that is moving here, this one could be made, would be made of brass, even with wooden examples. And I think I probably spoke about the remnants of an optical, such an instrument that we found on the kitten ship, right? That is still keeping me awake at night, trying to figure out what the hell was that thing doing aboard the ship, and why in the bow, not in the stern. Such instruments were valuable. They are expensive. I think they're still manufactured. And I believe that China manufactures probably a stolen version of it. That I have heard is a fairly good quality, but I have not had the opportunity to study one of those. I think the last time that I saw them in a catalog was something in the vicinity of $700. But European instruments like this one, Japanese instruments, they are much more expensive. They can be way over $1,200 or more. And generally speaking, as with everything else in life, you get what you pay for. In the case of the sextant, just as with the octant, you have an ocular, or in this case, it is only one, but sometimes they can be replaceable. And in my other sextant, I have two oculars, and you have the index mirror on the index arm. This is the mirror that you point at the sun or whatever else you're measuring, the height of which you're measuring. And by turning the index arm downwards, you're lowering the image onto the horizon. This mirror down here, just as with the octant, is split in two. They can be round, they can be rectangular, both existed. And the split mirror, the horizon mirror, has the left part as you're looking through the instrument. The outer part of the mirror is actually clear glass, the inner one is silvered. Because there is no faster way to acquire the absolutely necessary pirate patch over your eye than staring in the sun, people, to prevent this, have created filters, just as with the octant. And in this case, we have 3 horizon and another 3 index shades. And you can put 1, 2, or whatever number you need, or all together in order to cut off the glare. There is usually a button that you can depress, like this case, and this speeds up the turning of the index arm. And once you have brought the sun more or less down to the horizon, the finer adjustment is done with the help here of the turning at the end of the arm. And this is done when you're already observing the sun. You want the lower edge of the sun to touch the horizon. And then, of course, you swing the sextant to make sure that this is not an optical illusion, but it is actually touching. And how accurate is this instrument? This is one of the major advantages of the sextant over the octant, for example. It has somewhat higher resolution because of the more refined mechanism of the vernier scale. Theoretically, there shouldn't be any huge difference between the two instruments, but I believe in practice there are. If you're really good, if your eyes are still strong, if you are well practiced with the sextant, you can achieve less than half a mile, quarter of a mile accuracy in your position. If you are not, then the world is your oyster, is your shell. We all remember that Captain Aubrey once had determined that his midshipmen, if their positions were accurate, the brig Sophie had managed to achieve that position by cleaving through the middle of the mountain range in the south of Spain. No mean achievement in the Pyrenees. But, joking aside, I must admit that I too have achieved some quite spectacular results that I could not possibly have been in that position, except in my dreams. But other people, like My father, for example, could easily achieve half-mile accuracy with regularity. Of course, the moment I pronounce this half-mile, and most viewers are thinking of GPS, which theoretically can position you within a couple of feet, 3-5 feet, and you say, oh, useless. But think of it logically. How much accuracy do you actually need? How much more is modern navigational system really giving you when most of the charts are still based on surveys done in the 19th century? In other words, you're introducing a completely different level of error there. Big deal that you know exactly where your ship is if you cannot rely on the position of the reef. Or with modern navigation, you cannot actually see it on the chart because you have zoomed to the wrong level. There was the case of that famous professional racing crew in Volvo Around the World race, fully crewed, in which they managed to pilot their boat at good 20-odd knots on top of a reef in the Indian Ocean that is perfectly well charted. But the helmsman and the navigator had zoomed out because the boat was flying so fast on the screen, and they did not see the perfectly well-marked reef until they piled on top of it. Not to be down, I mean, these are professionals. If professionals can make this mistake, you can imagine what less professional and competent crews can do. While with a sextant, you cannot achieve that particular error. That's why I love my paper charts. And there always is a paper chart around me, unless I really know the water squall. For example, around Fisher's Island when we sail, I know it well enough. I know where the buoys are. I know where the hazards are. The final thing that I'm going to say about the sextant at its basic is used, of course, to take down, for example, the noon sun. This is the simplest navigational calculation that will give you the latitude. Theoretically, the sextant, with a different telescope that has more light gathering ability, can be used to take the height of stars, particularly at twilight, polar star, etc., which is an even easier calculation to determine your latitude. But it can be used for another thing. The sextant also has enough resolution in it that it can calculate, or rather can measure, the angular distance between celestial bodies. And that, of course, allows it to be used to measure the distance between the moons of Jupiter, which in turn can be used for calculation of local time, which in turn can be used for determining your longitude. I think that before I have promised to do a video on that horrible piece of garbage research on the longitude. Maybe I will have to do it sooner or later, reluctant as I am to badmouth that popular piece. Anyway, I think that this is enough for today. I just had to share with you my new toy, or fairly new, I got it back in October, and to share with you my love of all sorts of navigational instruments. Unfortunately, they tend to be pricey and outside the pocket abilities of a mere academic to collect and obtain. So, thank you, my friend, for giving me this. I know you like your privacy, that's why I'm not mentioning any names, but I do appreciate it. It's one of many things that you have helped me with. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so very much for watching. Thank you for liking, leaving comments, asking questions. It does sound like I'm mostly ignoring these nowadays, but eventually that monstrosity on my desk, that is to say my book, will be completed, and then I will have more time to answer questions and to address this properly. Until next time, Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking. And dear sponsors, thank you very, very, very much for your support and your vote of confidence. It means a very great deal to me. Thank you.